Hey guys, very tired Desolator Magic here, back from the pre-release event, and you might recall a couple days ago I said, hey, just looking at these spoilers, this looks like it'll be pretty fun, pretty appropriate, pretty balanced for draft and sealed, and it turned out I was right. I'd say overall it was very, very, very fun. Everybody had fun, but of course everybody at my store is, super cool, chill people pretty much. We're all like, hey, friendly, common interest, let's, make dumb jokes and eat junk food. So, just the card nicknames and the jokes about the art and the puns about the mechanics, it was cranked up to 11 this time. But that ain't nothing new. So even if the set's miserable, which I don't remember which one specifically, but a couple sets back, there was one that was just unbelievably unplayable at the pre-release. It was so bad. Everybody was doing terrible. Nobody could get anything going. And a couple people had like the god tier pools and everybody was pissed. But we still had fun just because each other were there. This time around, it was that, except that the set was really good. So I'm glad I was right about that. I mean, looks can be deceiving. Something can look just fine, and then once you actually do it, it's like, whoa. And you really do need the sample size of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people, however many people go to your pre-release, all getting together and all playing against each other and seeing how they do, how they like their deck, how it's put together, how the gameplay goes. But yeah, with the sample size of one entire story, I would say it was fantastic. I mean, if I were to break it down to pros and cons or strengths and weaknesses for the fun level of this in Limited, which of course includes Sealed, which is the pre-release, or Draft, it's probably something that they just can't avoid, and that's if you were to get the really, really, really good synergy cards and enough of them, you could just blow people up with something that's just unstoppable, because it's kind of biggest creature wins, and it's kind of like most creatures win. It kind of devolves to that a little bit. So if you pull like 3 different cards that all say all knights get +1/+1, you almost can't lose. You just play 3 color knights and you just win. Now there's 40 cards in the deck, you'd still need more than that, but it's just an example of how things can get just completely nuts. If things line up just right, you're basically going to have like a 0 skill deck where as long as you don't miss it and you build your deck correctly, you should be able to get first place easily. Now that said, with this one, I came in, I believe, 2nd place overall with a astonishingly mediocre pool and mediocre deck. It was 3 color knights with the most generic, average, 5 out of 10 deck you'll ever see in your life. It was 3 removal spells, 1 fixing card, half knights, half not, 2 combat ambushes at instant speed, a couple flyers, 1 card that boosted all knights, 1 card that dropped counters onto everything, just nothing special, just, all good stuff that you would want in your deck, but just nothing standout-ish as whoa. Now my pool was good enough that I had options, but I thought, well, I hate going 3 color, and it did backfire a spectacular amount of time. I believe 4 of the games it kicked me right in the balls. Because remember, there's next to no fixing, and I did pull the triple color land, but still, there's still next to no fixing. But whenever you go 3 color, you could just play best of and drop the kind of middle to weak stuff, and then there you go, you're stuck with only strong stuff. Which is kind of true. I mean, all my creatures were kind of mid-size. There was just not one single card that said just run away with the game and just win it. But they did exist, so I would say that knights are one of the most problematic ones potentially in draft or sealed. And sealed, it's not too bad because it's okay, whatever, you're just relying on the pool. But draft, I feel like everybody's going to start drafting knights. And it's going to start with 1 color, then go to 2, and then maybe go to 3 depending upon what shows up. But if everybody's doing that, one guy at the table is going to be the king of the fairies. And the rest, I mean, maybe an all wolves deck. Those are doable. They're very in this set only, and they're good. But then if everybody's sharing the same cards, nobody's deck is going to be any good. So I think draft is actually probably going to be pretty rough. But only against real opponents, not against the AI in Arena. So I'm shocked to even hear myself say this, but the biggest issue I found was that in the common and uncommon slot for the whole set, pretty much, there's just nothing good. It's no matter what, you're going to be running a generic deck unless you pull mad synergy or the couple very above average cards. Now that said, you guys know I love low powered magic, and some of those games were amazing, but a lot of the time it was just well, I got a couple 1, 2, and 3 toughness and attack creatures, you've got a couple, neither of us can swing and nothing's happening. Wow. I think this set needed about 5 more combat ambushes in at least white, green, and black. That would have almost single-handedly fixed it. The problem is, like, Constructed does not need more of that, especially in white and especially in red. Because then it's like pseudo removal, it's a threat, you can hit somebody lower than they thought they were going to get hit if they let something through, you can maybe remove something. Those are probably my favorite archetype of card, is the like +2/+2 for whatever, and maybe lifelink, maybe death touch, maybe draw a card, whatever, at instant speed in the middle of combat. Those are just so good. And I think they make the gameplay more dynamic and exciting. But that said, I mean, I'm going almost exclusively off of my deck, but then again, I was in like the 3rd/4th slot going into the last round, because the system paired me up, which is great, but I was undefeated if you count the tie. And the other guy's deck was just, that's some good cards. Nothing real standout-ish, but it's some good cards. For the top 4 out of that many people, I feel like we should have had better decks. But then again, the 2 people sitting next to us for the top spot were crazy. I mean, their decks had some pretty advanced tricks in them. But everybody else looking at the other gameplay, I mean, maybe not everybody there was as good at deck building as it could have been, but on the lower end, it seemed to be kind of the same dull, boring blah decks. Mine was a little bit better than theirs, and that's why I ended up in the top. So a lot of kind of blah gameplay, but, you know, a lot of dynamic gameplay too. So just a couple more interesting cards, just tweaking it a little bit would have made it a little bit better. But when it's a little bit more hand-picked in draft, I think that's not going to be a problem. So would I have realistically actually changed the set just to make just sealed at just the pre-release better? No. Constructed should come first, draft should come second, and sealed should be a distant third. I do feel like with how, you know, not obvious it was to build like, oh, well, look at these 3 cards. Of course I'm going to put these in and do this. If you just take your pool and you're like, wow, this is just some average kind of neat stuff. Well, what am I supposed to do with this? The fact that you have more options means that if you're really, really, really used to deck building in a crunch in 30 minutes, you might be able to put together some things that you just kind of spot where you're like, oh, maybe this with this, with this, with this, with this would equal some amplified triggers, and I could maybe kind of cascade this into this, into this. Oh, that's interesting. And then you put up, you know, some weird 2 colors that wouldn't normally go together, and you make something very interesting and unique out of it, which I saw a couple people do. Some of the better deck builders there came up with some pretty wacky stuff. And whether you win or lose, if it isn't a complete disaster, like you don't just wipe, you know, lose every single round, you got to be proud of that, because it's like, okay, look what I actually made work out of this pool. That's almost like more rewarding, even though the skill level is so much higher, than just looking at your pool and like, oh, well, I guess I'm going goblins. Yeah, I've got 2 of the best goblin cards, and I pulled a bunch of goblins. I guess I'm going goblins, which that's just a made-up example. But the little tiny negatives and little flaws with this set are vastly overshadowed by how great it is and all the fun that everybody had, and how everybody had like a different kind of deck. I mean, any set that can pull that off, that's pretty good. It wasn't just knights. You know, like the Eldrazi back in the day, everybody was like, so are you playing the Eldrazi deck? It's not even an Eldrazi deck, it's just the Eldrazi deck because it was all synergy. They might as well have been slivers. And then everybody's like, are you playing this, or this archetype? And like, that was it, unless you got something weird going, but it seemed pretty locked down, and it was just count the bombs. It makes it easier to build, but it's also boring because you shouldn't have, in a sealed tournament, mirror matches. So even if somebody did have, like, it's knights versus knights, it might be 2 color versus 3 color, or 2 color versus different 2 color, and then the big chaos factor were the colorless cards. Because I had a couple help me out in certain equipment and stuff. It's pretty funny. I even saw some people get like some recurring triggers going off. Very popular was that stupid Trebuchet card, which everybody seemed to hate as much as I did at the spoiler video. Yeah, it turns out in practice it's really dickish. Imagine that. And technically that was a colored artifact, but I got the 5/5 for 6 Scry 2 guy. Like that's all he does, and he's colorless. And that helped me up my consistency because I needed what I needed when I needed it. I either needed more creatures or better boost or better removal. And so I needed Scry to get to it. So I threw in a colorless card, and all of a sudden I had Scry without playing blue. And I will say most of all, it was nice to just kind of cool it on the Planeswalkers because I'm so over them after the last set. Or, I mean, War of the Spark. So what do you think? Did you have a similar experience as me with it being very powered down but not boring necessarily? Would you rate the deck building skill required as high or low? I know it took me about 10 minutes longer than normal, which that's a lot. Oh, and I know somebody's going to ask, I pulled a foil Piper of the Swarm and I don't even know what it's called at this point, extended art, borderless, I don't know, whatever, Rowan and what's her favorite brother, the Planeswalker duo thing. Wasn't able to play it because it wasn't on color. That's a shame, but that has got to be worth some serious money. But I don't remember how many different versions between borderless, regular frame, alternate art, how many are in the collector's boosters, how many collector's boosters were actually printed, because it turns out Europe got 10% of what they thought they were getting. Thanks, Wizards. And were these just available in the pre-release kit, or are these available in normal ones? Because I thought to get the special borders and the fancy stuff on the adventures, you had to go outside the normal boosters, but then people were pulling them at the pre-release, so I guess not. I don't remember if I'm remembering that wrong. Okay, I just checked. According to Card Kingdom right now, it's considered borderless. It's called the Royal Scions, and it's worth $25. And they're saying the Piper is only $3, which would be great because it's a purple foil and I want to keep it, but I have a feeling that might go up a bit in popularity, so I'm going to hold that for a bit. But there's a couple other cards, like my promo was the Triple Black Lady. She's probably pretty good. You gotta wait for the dust to settle to see what people are playing, which, by the way, if Arena's any indication, it is 10 times worse than it was before rotation. But who knows, the metagame is changing every single day, literally. So I wouldn't go buying or selling cards too quick. I'd wait at least 2 weeks to see what happens. But it is nice to, in addition to doing very well at the pre-release, also getting enough cards to basically pay for the pre-release. So I'm very happy with that. Oh, and that borderless Planeswalker I opened was the first pack first card. Also, in case you didn't notice, which really, and in case you didn't go to the pre-release, which would make way more sense, the regular booster packs from the regular booster boxes, not the pre-release kits, but the regular boosters, were printed on Japanese paper, the purple core paper, Japanese ink, in Japan. And thus, that's why they're backwards. So, why? I don't know. I don't know why Wizards doesn't comment on it. They usually don't miss a chance to pat themselves on the back for something they think they did well. The last couple times we had a Japanese printed one, it was because they needed to optically sort them a certain way. I would not say that that's true with this one. And the only other times, they just really wanted it to be high quality because it was a master set. So to do it out of nowhere with just a random standard set, I don't know. I don't know what's behind it, but it's nice. I will say the Japanese ones don't curl quite as much, but they did lower the quality of that purple core paper over there as well, unfortunately. So I think that's all the interesting updates in my post-game report of how things went. Hopefully, you guys, if you missed it or if you did have fun at the first one, you can go to a second or even a third pre-release event at your store or a different store or whatever. Usually, a lot of stores will run them on Saturday and sometimes even Sunday. I'd recommend everybody go to at least one. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next video.